The third fight of my career was against Ed De Kruijf. He was a student of Gordeau, and he actually just won the European Cage Fighting Championship. So it was one of my big tests to fight a real legit MMA fighter. We're going to be discussing it, so check it out.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Yamatodamashii podcast. My name is James, and of course, I'm here with the MMA pioneer, Mr. Enson Inoue.
What's up?
So today we talked last time about the Rene Rose fight, a big fight in Enson's career, and we're going to go straight into the next fight in his career against Mr. Ed De Kruijf. And I guess the best place to start off is kind of after the end of the last fight. And I think what probably viewers of this podcast will be curious to know is when we did the early days episode, Enson, you mentioned about how you were sort of thinking fighting would be like one and done, and then sort of Sayama convinced you to do another fight. And I'm just wondering, was that the case here, or had your perspective changed at all? What was the situation?
Yeah, it seems like there was always like a good reason to fight another one. Like after the first fight, it was big write-up, big excitement, new Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioner on the scene, big picture. I had also the obligation to, Sayama took a lot of time to work with me and gave me the opportunity, so I didn't feel like I could just turn my back because he was so excited, so I did another one. The Rene Rose fight turned out to be a very good fight, and when that fight was over, I was thinking, okay, now I'm going to go back to Hawaii. And then Sayama came and told me, hey, Enson, I want you to fight main event next fight. So now the movement, the next fight that made me think, okay, I got to fight one more is he wants me to headline a card. So I'm thinking, okay, he helped me train on his side. He gave me the opportunity. With his help, I did very good in those first two fights. I was okay, give him a main event, man. Give him one more. Give that to him, So that is a main event. He was testing out a new ring. It was actually in an octagon. So he wanted to test out the new ring. He wanted me to be the main event, and I felt obligated to, fight one last one for him.
One last for him. And I mean, I guess there's, it does seem like if you go back and watch a lot of the fights back in like 95, 94, 96, around that sort of time, there seems to be a lot of fighters that sort of came in, bit of a flash in the pan, and then sort of exited. And so I could see, it's quite MMA wasn't what it was today now, so not everyone was jumping in to sort of start a career there. But with this fight, Sayama had did he tell you who the opponent was when you sort of agreed that it would be a main event?
Yeah, well, when he came, he told me a main event. I think later on in the week, he came and told me that there's this guy named, I think his pronunciation is Ed De Kruijf.
Okay.
I think, I don't know, maybe you're saying it right, maybe I'm saying it right, I don't know.
I might have butchered it horribly.
I think it was Ed De Kruijf, and he said that he wants me to fight Ed De Kruijf, and he just won the European cage fighting. So he was Gordeau's student, which was appealing to me because I really didn't have a good feeling towards Gordeau. Mm-hmm. He was Gordeau's student, and he was the European cage champion. So I was thinking, wow, what a challenge for me. I'm going to fight the guy who is considered the one of the best fighters in Europe for cage fighting. So, he told me that, and I thought I watched. I think there was only like one or two videos on the guy, and I noticed he was like a real good wrestler. Rather than a striker, he was a wrestler. So I thought, man, that it kind of falls into my alley, man. I mean, my wrestling's not that good, but my ground is better. So our striking is both of us pretty shitty. So I thought, man, this is a pretty even fight. It's a pretty exciting fight. So I like to test myself against the guy who won the European cage fighting. So that's how it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely seems like you guys were almost sort of similar in rises in where you guys were at with your career. Obviously, Ed had a big win over Bob Schreiber in the tournament that you just referred to. So he was sort of coming off. That was in January '95. You'd had your two big wins as well at that point. So it was kind of like 2-0, who's O will go.
Almost like we were kind of destined to hit head on. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like you guys were at similar levels. I think obviously the fight probably showed that you were the next step up, but we'll get into sort of how the fight plays out. But just going back to something you mentioned there, you mentioned that with Gordeau, it was a bit personal. And the way I'm reading into this is obviously that Nakai Yuki was a training partner. You were both on the Vale Tudo 95 card. But maybe just in your words, how did you feel about what happened there? And maybe just give a bit of context to what actually happened at Vale Tudo 95 between Gordeau and Nakai.
Well, Vale Tudo 95, as you know, the sport was very misunderstood. It was considered human cockfighting. There were very little rules. And I really didn't like what Gordeau did because he eye gouged Nakai's eyes, and I thought, man, there's already so little bit rules. Why you got to do that now? And Nakai lost his sight from it, so he lost his all his vision. It killed all the nerves. So I felt like he did went a little stepped over the line, went a little too far, and just really didn't think much of the guy. I just thought he was a real big asshole. So, I mean, any way to get back at him, any way to hurt him, if it didn't be having to beat a student, that was an incentive for me. Like, okay, now let's crush Gordeau's idea of his fighter coming in and winning. So yeah, it kind of was a little incentive to you want to fight somebody linked with Gordeau.
Did it feel differently having a little bit of sort of personal animosity there going into the fight, or were you always sort of managed to keep it reserved, or how?
Yeah, no, it didn't feel any different because when I fought Shigeta Shingo, when I fought Renan Rose, for me it wasn't a sport. These guys were kind of hurt me, so it was personal. Every fight was personal.
Right.
Just this Ed De Kruijf fight just made it a little bit more rewarding to beat him because then I could stuff the dreams of his coach.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it really didn't make much of a difference because when someone's trying to take your life, in the way I saw it, the way I fought is kill or be killed. I'm going to try and take your life before you take my life. The fact that they're trying to take my life is personal, very personal.
Yeah, it's as personal as it gets, really.
Yeah.
And so you touched on it before about the cage, right? So most people hearing this are probably a little bit confused, right? Because me personally, when I think of Shuto, I think of the Shuto ring, as that was obviously key in the early shows. Do you know much about why sort of Sayama sort of decided to go down that route at all? Or?
Sayama's a very innovative person. Like, he invented Shuto. So, he actually is a very genius in creating martial arts and, that type of things. Of course, all the stuff he tries to do, there's some failures, and I think the ring was one of them. But he wanted to create a ring where it was still the traditional ropes, but it still prevented the fighters from falling out.
Mm-hmm.
So you got the cage. The cage, the fighters don't fall out, but there's no ropes there. So I think he felt that with the cage videos and pictures like that, it would be interfered with the cage.
Mm-hmm.
But the ropes could have more of a clear pictures and clear waves for the fans to watch. And it's also like really traditional to have ropes across in a fight. So he wanted to try and find a way to combine the two.
Mm-hmm.
And he came up with that. And, because UFC had an octagon, he wanted to make it the size of an octagon. So, he tried that. It was real weird because it was like almost like a fishnet on the last two ropes was covered with a net.
Yeah, it looks different to say the least. Just not to sort of digress too much, but your thoughts. Obviously, you fought a few times in the cage, predominantly you fought in the ring. Just wondering what your preferences were.
I like the cage better because the fights won't get stopped so fast because fighters can't fall out of the cage. Like the ring, the fighters can fall out. The fighters can grab onto the ropes. That kind of stuff. I like the cage because for one, the fights continue longer, and two, something about stepping in the cage is like it almost brings that an animalistic feeling in you.
Mhm.
Like you step in and they shut the cage and there's no way out. You can't really get out of the cage, and the cage is pretty much the only place. The only things you put in the cage is animals.
Mhm.
So when you're in there and the guys that's been training 3 months is standing across the cage from you, they shut that door and you're in that freaking chain link cage. Something about it. There's just this real primeval thing that comes out in you, man. For me, at least,
Yeah,
I like the
yeah, and
cage.
I think a lot of other fighters would probably agree with you there. To be fair, just on the sort of mentality of going into a cage rather than going into a ring. A lot of fans might prefer the ring, just because, especially the live fans, right, with the viewing of the actual
Yeah.
event. But so, going into the fight, then you kind of you knew a bit about Ed coming into this fight. You knew a bit about some of his fights in terms of his abilities, his skills. What sort of training did you do go into it? Were you in Japan the whole time before it, or did you go back to Hawaii at all?
I went back to Hawaii and I went and did beach sprints, sparred with Egan's guys at Grappling Unlimited. So all my training, all my fights, I would always the Shuto guys would fly me back to Hawaii, and I get all my training done there, and then I just finish up my training in Japan. But most of my training was done in Hawaii in the beginning of my career.
Oh, nice. And so talk to me a bit about how you walk to this ring slash cage. You get in it. You see him across from you. Any sort of key thoughts that are going through your head at this point? You can see sort of Gerard Gordeau in his corner as well. What's the emotions like going into it? Or are you completely just sort of blanking everything out?
No, I'm ready for war. I trained hard. I know he was training for me. I was training for him. Got into the ring. I did see Gordo there, but just because I dislike the guy, he's standing on the side outside of the cage. He's not going to try and hurt me. My whole focus, my whole energy is on Ed. Um, if it was God, if it was a Gordo, if it was some other dude standing behind, Ed is still there, and Ed's the one who's going to hurt me. So the whole feeling was the same like the first two fights. I'm in there thinking, okay, I walk in the ring and see the guy across from me, and the first feeling I get is, oh, how dare you? How dare you want to hurt me? How dare you want to end my life?
Mhm.
And I have that little bit of animosity towards them, like how dare you try to hurt me, end my life?
Yeah.
And
Gotcha.
then of course I'm calm enough that the game plan is in my head. And for Ed De Kruijf, the game plan, because he was such a good wrestler, I wasn't going to force a takedown. So my game plan was to move around, jab, move around, and wait for the timing to strike or wait for his shot.
Yeah, and I got to ask this because one of the things I noticed is actually in the beginning of the fight, he actually there was an eye poke. And I don't know whether that was sort of intentional or unintentional, but given Gordo's in his corner, given everything you saw with Nakai, was there anything that did that hit you at all? What was your reaction to actually receiving that eye poke?
I didn't really think anything of it.
Mhm.
His finger did go in my eye, and um, it did bother me a little bit. But I think everything happened so fast. I wasn't about saying, "Oh, you fucker! That's what Gordo did. You guys are dirty motherfuckers." I didn't think that
Mhm.
at all. And I think from what I recall, I remember like I kind of like it kind of bothered my ass, was kind of shake it off. I think when he saw that, he saw it as a chance and he closed distance and he tried to attack me then. So it kind of helped because it made the fight move forward a little faster because we were kind of moving around, jabbing and moving around each other. And when his finger went into my eye, that's when that kind of made him close. So it kind of worked out good.
Yeah, yeah, which is not usually the case, right? But it seems like you just sort of soldiered on and just carried on with the game plan. But so as he comes in close, then what happens next?
Yeah, then he comes in and I think I clinch him. And although he was a wrestler, I think I lifted and took him to the ground.
Yeah, and he has you. He's almost like trying to put you in like a side headlock sort of thing. Like
And then what was amazing was that he grabbed my hand and he kind of pulled. And he was so strong that he just pulled and kind of had me on the ground in the side headlock. But any Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioner knows that if you have a headlock and you don't control the arm on the bottom, I'm going to be able to come on and take your back. So when he had me in the headlock, he didn't have my arm with the head. He just had my head. And the arm wasn't like, usually you pull the arm up real tight so I can't spin. But he kind of had it real half-ass. And it was real funny because Sayama's goofy cage, we're kind of falling into that cage, the net pocket area. And it was real funny because I didn't realize that it was just instinctive that when the ref started pulling us out, I kind of reached up and grabbed the cage and kind of and had that little, that small shift of degree where I could easily take his back. Yeah, so if I didn't do that shift, I would have had to work a little bit harder to get his back. But as they were moving us, I think, I don't know, I got to watch it again, but I think I kind of shifted. I don't know if I touched the ropes a little bit, and I kind of shifted to get it was instinctive to want to get in that position. And so when the ref said go, I already was able to get the hook in his leg and got my head out and took the back right away.
And then so when you're on the back, it almost looks like you have the choke. But then did he kind of sort of escape? Because obviously you transitioned to the armbar. I'm just curious to know sort of what was going through your head.
What happened was I had the back, and then I don't think I really went for a choke, but I was trying to hit him. Mm-hmm. And just soften him up and see if I either go for a choke or keep punching him on the ground from the back. And I noticed that he was so strong that he stood up on all fours. And I didn't do the proper technique to flatten him out again. And he had such a strong base that I was starting to slide off the top. And in my practice and in my training, what happens when you fall off the top is you get a last chance on the arm before you fall off. So what I did was I just positioned where I was falling off. I swiveled my hips, got onto the arm, and passed my leg over the front of the head and locked the arm in pretty deep.
Yeah, in your book you mentioned about how you thought you could almost hear some of the ligaments popping in the arm or something.
Yeah, so I started extending it, and then it started popping. A couple pops, I think. And then from there, I went against the elbow to the side and started pushing it to the side where it popped a couple more times. And I had it in deep. He wasn't going to get out of it. So the longer they let me, the more damage I was going to do to the arm. And, in the position I was introverted. So my head was on the ground. My legs were up in the air. So I had the weight of my body. So with the right angle, with the right timing, I was thinking I could actually break the arm, compound fracture the arm. So I was waiting for that, getting ready for that. And I remember the ref came in and ran and stopped the fight. So I released it, slid off of him. And I remember seeing him protest and saying, I didn't tap. And Gordeau was saying, he didn't tap. And I want to point out that, when the ref stops a fight like that, and, some people say, oh, wow, the fighter didn't tap. Poor thing, they stopped the fight. It's the opposite way. I worked the whole fight to get into that position where I could break the arm. Instead of letting me break it, they stopped me from breaking it.
Mhm.
They stopped me from breaking it, and they give that guy a reason to complain that he didn't tap. Now, for me, I feel like the unfortunate person is me, not that guy. So when I saw Ed De Kruijf and Gordeau grumbling about it, first thing popped in my head is they're super uneducated because they don't even know how deep that arm was in.
Mhm.
And the second thing I thought was, they're fucking idiots. And I remember purposely walking and circling over to Gordeau's. I don't know if there's a video on the fight, but if you go to watch the video, I'm walking past him, kind of staring him down, waiting for him to flip me off or do anything. So I was going to run over and freaking punch him off the ring.
Mhm.
But he didn't do anything. He was more conscious on the ref telling him he didn't tap. So I kind of stared him down, and I thought it'd be really dick of me to try and, punch him from the side when he's talking to the grumbling with the referee. So I let it go, and I just walked by and figured out, chalk it up as a win, and I beat his best student. So
Yeah. And you guys sort of buried the beef later. I think later in
yeah,
in your career, right?
I must have to say that because later on, after I actually did some pro wrestling, and Gordeau was one of my opponents. So pro wrestling. I don't know if I want to pop a lot of bubbles here, but it's premeditated. I mean, it's already skidded on who's going to win and who's going to lose. So when I went into the room to talk to Gordeau, I was, I had this real big thing like, this guy's going to go off the plan and do dirty shit. And I knew I had confidence that I could hurt him. So I remember thinking to myself, well, it's going to be really interesting because if he does that, I'm going to go full on real on him. And the pro wrestling event is going to have a real fight happening. And they'll probably know that it's not fake. It's not a fixed, not a pro wrestling fight when they see the way it goes.
Mhm.
So I had the guard up like, fuck, this guy is going to do something dirty. But man, the guy was cool. He was legit. He followed the script. He was, he's known for eye gouging. So in that fight, they were going to have him like kind of eye gouge me. And so, that he didn't do it really hard.
Yeah.
It was super cool. So I thought, yeah, wow. I had my little doubts like, wow, Gordeau's not that bad of a guy. Maybe it's the heat of the moment. He was, in that, wasn't a sport to him. So then later on, I think it was in Syracuse, New York. I went to they called it the MMA Legends. So we had a lot of the legends there: Mark Coleman, Gary Goodrich, Don Fry, Emmanuel Butterbean, Brian Johnston. Who's that guy with the one big glove?
Art Jimison.
Yeah, Art Jemison.
Mhm.
Art Davey, the promoter for UAC, was there. Had Dan Severin. All the boys were there.
Yeah.
And Gordeau was there.
Right. Cool.
And it was the funniest thing because when I saw him, I was like, oh shit, Gordeau. The last thing we had was pro wrestling. It was kind of cool, but I still had that little bit like, wow, this guy fucking did that to Nakai, and Nakai's blind for life now.
Mm.
But he comes up to me, he says, hey, Enz, how you doing? And he's like, starts joking around and like, was like the nicest guy.
Yeah.
And so, when people, it's changed my whole view on Gordeau. He's a really nice guy. I mean, cool dude, real humorous. And, I take it now. I understand now that it happened because it was the heat of the moment. And you got to respect that he was taking it as like a life and death event. And he was doing what he can to live. So, unfortunate for Nakai, but, that's one of those sacrifices that the pioneers of MMA did, right? We didn't have the proper rules, the safety stuff. Nakai was unfortunate that, MMA was still so raw that people could get away with that kind of stuff. So, we buried the beef. Super cool dude. Nice guy, man. Really nice guy.
Yeah, it's crazy that your story sort of comes from such a long way in terms of sort of your initial feelings about him and to go down. And I have seen the pro wrestling match. If anyone hasn't, it is, I think, on YouTube or something. It's worth a watch just because it's quite funny seeing the like worked eye gouging. But yeah, it's interesting that actually going into that, you still kind of had your reservations on whether he'd pull something or not. So
Yeah.
that's great. So yeah, so I mean that after your third fight, you get the win with a nice armbar. Obviously, they're complaining the stoppage, but how were you feeling about everything?
Yeah, I didn't really worry about the stoppage complaining. I didn't really care about it. It was a victory. It's just their lack of knowledge that what an armbar really is and what I could have really done with that armbar in the position that I had it. It's their lack of knowledge. So I was super satisfied, and I was pretty happy about the whole thing. And talked to Sayama. He came and congratulated me, and I thought that was it. For me it was okay. I'll do it to give back to him because I got a full cultural page. He's excited. Then I said, okay, he wants me to fight one more. It's a big arena. He wants me to, okay, I'll do one more for him. And then he wanted me in this main event, and I said, okay, I'll do the main event for him. So for me, I was like, okay, wow. I was planning to get one fight. I got three. Great, did good, and I still, for me, MMA wasn't a career for me. It was just something to strengthen myself as a person, as a man, and still was pretty much looking forward to closing that door and going home to Hawaii and continuing my surfing and diving.
It's crazy to think, if you had been just 3 fights and done, like the amount of moments that you would admit, your life would be completely different, right? If you had actually taken that. But great. Well, I think that sort of wraps up this episode. But what we will do is on the next episode we'll talk about sort of what got you into the next fight. So, but yeah, any parting words before we go?
For the next one.
yeah, there is another episode. Spoiler alert, people. So
yeah, much more.
yeah. Awesome. Well, I guess everything from me. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and look out for future videos. Enson, any parting words?
Yeah. Again, leave comments. I look at every single comment. I'll have a thumbs up and a like to show that I read it. If there's any questions, I answer them all. So anything you guys have, question, ask. Spread the word, man. Spread the word that the Yamatodamashii podcast is on, and it's going strong. So see you guys in the next episode.
Great. Thanks, everybody.